to Judith. And my question will be, I'll take this one, on cannabis. We touched on vaping, e-cigarettes, but regarding cannabis or any other, inhaled drug use, what are the trends in a way? What's the impact? There are some people who don't smoke tobacco but only cannabis. What's the effect? What's the effect if you mix them? Do we have enough studies to answer these questions? So what would you say?
Honestly, I don't know about the answer. So probably cannabis is going to affect, I think some of the health effects in other organs like the brain are worse and maybe do not allow developing COPD because people will die sooner. So, but it should be related probably to an increased risk of COPD. Whether this is a challenge for the next decade, if the use is been changing, I'm not sure about that. I don't think there are clear patterns. There is a clear increase in the population of the use of these drugs now. What I think is that at the population level, the initiation age has started in relation to tobacco and probably other drugs. And whether this may mean that we will see young or earlier COPD, this is not known. We need still the time to come. But
okay,
that would be my guess.
Yeah, okay, but that's very important, because what I understand from what you're saying is that we definitely need more research. So it means that we need to engage also researchers to go in that direction and gather more data on this. Another question to you, Judith, which I hope it is not as tricky as the previous one, and I hope you will have more data that you can use. But it's a practical one. We are facing more and more climate events, such as heat waves. With heat waves, we have more pollution, etc. What would be? Do we have enough data to give advice to the patient, and which advice, for example, should we give them when there is a heat wave? What should they do? Should they stay, at home and wait until it ends? Should they still move? Should they put the air conditioning on, which is bad for the climate, but better for their health?
So clearly, we need more research in that. So there are going to be effects on COPD patients in the prognosis of the disease as they have, as the effects are for the general population. What we don't know is whether COPD patients will be more vulnerable than other people, or let's say other elderly people, to these extreme events. So we don't know that, and we need research on that. Obviously, if we don't know that, we still don't have information on the potential interventions to mitigate the effects, and we need to research on that. In absence of this knowledge, we would need to use the traditional recommendations. So patients need still to be physically active, because it's worse to be physically inactive than to be exposed to air pollution or heat, let's say. They should be encouraged to do their physical activity practice in the time when the weather is better, in the time and the place where the air pollution is lower, use masks if these are possible, check the forecast, keep well hydrated. So the normal recommendations that you would do to an elderly person, they should work for COPD patients.
Okay, yeah, thanks a lot, because you say normal advice, but I think it's important to remind people what these normal advice are, because probably we tend to forget a bit about these, and patients ask. So thanks very much for this. I'm going to go back to Rosa, and I have a question I don't know if there is an answer. Given all the work you showed on the biomarkers in the various stages in terms of age, etc., of COPD, do you think there might be some room for biologics targeting TSLP or other alarmins? There are some studies ongoing with the anti-T2 for those patients with some eosinophil phenotype. But for TSLP, do you think this could be a target in COPD?
I think that in those patients that fulfill the mechanism of TSLP requirement, yes, no. So if you have someone that has some characteristics similar to what is used in asthma, no, so then yes, it would not be an overlap. But we know that not some patients have reversibility, some patients may have eosinophilia, some patients may have also concomitant asthma. So I don't think yes. I think yes, but the studies should be conducted. I think we have to move towards recognizing to which patients need an anti-IL-4 or an anti-TC or the TCLP can be used, or even something like targeting the neutrophils. So I think there is room, but we are moving towards identifying to which patient this should be used, and it's not to everyone.
Okay, yeah. Okay, let's move to David. Very practical question. You insisted a lot, and certainly right, to insist on that, on the comorbidities, on the multimorbid condition, and on the need to assess a bit systematically the patient for this. From a very practical perspective, how do you do that? And maybe focusing on anxiety and depression, do you have a questionnaire that you use, or do you have questions that you systematically ask the patient? How do you do that?
Sure. So, I mean, there are questionnaires. There's the HAD scale, which is used in research, but is not really terribly useful for routine clinical practice. There are a number of others. One of them was developed for identifying postnatal depression and is a series of simple questions that you can use. I tend to just talk to patients, though. I discussed this with primary care colleagues some time ago, and they said in their experience, identifying anxiety and depression, the best way is to ask patients, say, do you get a bit down sometimes? How does that affect you? Do you get a bit worried? Do you get anxious when you get breathless? And patients then begin to talk.
Okay, yeah, that's clear. Thierry, well, I have a question that might be strange, but actually thinking about it, I find it interesting. Is there an effect, you're going to be surprised, is there an effect of rehab on blood eosinophil count? And I think the idea behind that is that we know that physical exercise, physical activity is anti-inflammatory, whatever it means in that context. Are you aware of any study? I can't think of any, but are you aware of any study measuring eosinophils after and comparing to before rehab? Maybe the answer is no, and it will be quick.
Yeah, so the answer can be a quick no. I'm not aware of any studies. What we do know is that rehabilitation has an impact on exacerbation rates and the risk of being readmitted to hospital after an exacerbation. But there might be work, but not that I can sort of bring to the stage right now.
Okay, but it's interesting. It's something we need to check. So I will have another question for you, which is which one I'm going to? Yeah. You showed us a graph with the effect of bronchodilators, the effect of rehab, the effect of both, which was bigger than each of the others separately. Is it an additive effect? Is there some synergy? Do you think bronchodilators facilitate or increase the effect of rehab, or it's just the addition of the two of them?
No, well, theoretically, it should be synergistic, because if you give a patient a bronchodilator, that patient can actually train harder and will have more effect of the exercise training program. So because there is a dose response in terms of how much you gain from exercise and the dose of exercise that you got. So these effects are synergistic rather than just cumulative. And there's one nice study, I think, that looked at it also by the group of Richard Casaburi. And separately. So it really goes hand in hand, and it makes sense because with exercise training, you're focusing on the muscle and on the cardiovascular system. With a bronchodilator, you're actually improving lung function. So it's not too weird that if you combine both, that you get a better and synergistic effect.
Okay, that's very clear. And so I think the last question will be for Judith. You touched on the patient voice, and definitely that's something very, very important. What about the relatives, the family, the friends, all the patients who are moving, all the people, who are moving around the patient? How should we deal with them? How should we listen to them?
Yeah, I think they fall under the same basket as the patients. So the point here is that there is this general trend towards patients and carers asking to be more involved in the decisions about their treatment and in the research about their disease. And this is not going to stop. So that's it. And we need to be prepared for that. Those working in research, those working in the clinical setting, this is going to increase, and we need to hear to them.
Okay, that's very clear. So, well, now I think it's time to thank you all. Thank both, my co-chair, of course, and the national chairs that we had with us. And of course, also thank our speakers. These were really wonderful talks. We learned a lot of new information, a lot of very practical information. So I think we have a lot to bring back home, which is great. Now, we also need to thank the audience for attending first, and then for participating. And again, sorry for not being able to ask all the questions we received, way too much, which is great. So now we have a 1 hour break, and we need to reconvene for all those who will be able to do so in 1 hour from now, which would be 2:30, 14:30 CET, and we'll have a nice lunch or whatever you're going to do during this hour. And we will have asthma and ventilation in the afternoon.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.